Okay, so let's talk alignments. What is an alignment? Basically, the short version is where your tires are sitting on the vehicle. Uh, it is based off of the rear tires to the front tires. Now, on trucks and most cars or most SUVs, you have a solid rear end. Basically, you cannot adjust the rear due to leaf springs, some of the newer GMs, Tahoes and Suburbans, they went to a coil spring, but it's a solid axle. It can't be adjusted back there. Then you go to your cars and your crossover SUVs. Those can be adjusted on most applications. Your town and country minivans, things like that, cannot be adjusted in the rear. But the front tires drive off of the rear wheels. So the alignment is everything based off of your rear tires to your front tires. So basically you have several things you can look at. One, tire wear, whether they're feathered or chopped, whether they're wearing on the inside or the outside, can determine the alignment issue. Also, the lack of tire rotation can simulate a bad alignment because a lack of rotation creates feathering. So there's a lot of things to take in consideration. Most manufacturers recommend doing an alignment once a year. I'm one of those. Anytime you get new tires, always do an alignment. That way you don't wear out new tires. Anytime you do steering work, get an alignment done. Anytime you do suspension work like your ball joints, control arms, get an alignment. If you live down a hard, bumpy dirt road, get it more often. That way you save your tires and your suspension steering components. So if you're out on dirt, bumpy roads, you definitely want to have your alignment done a little more frequent, just because the steady abuse to your suspension components and steering components can wear them out faster. So always have it checked more frequently. So today we are working on a 2013 Nissan Frontier. We just did tie rods, outer tie rods. So this does not have a rear adjustable suspension. It is a solid axle. So the rears are not adjustable, but we can adjust the front. Because we only did the tie rods, we're not going to do a full caster sweep, and we'll get into that here in just a second, as well as the camber. I've already got the machine set up, and I'll show you the process of that, but this one's not going to have camber done. One, it doesn't need it, and two, we just did tie rods, so we're going to do what is considered a tow and go. So I'll go ahead and show you the process of setting up the alignment machine. Generally you're at home, don't have the equipment to do this at home, so shop's going to do it, but we'll go ahead and give you a breakdown of what's going on. So here we go. Okay, so this is what is classified as a Hunter laser alignment. So this still runs cord instead of a light that has mirrors that send signals back and forth. This to me is a little bit more traditional, a little more accurate, because it does actually use lasers, and it does correlate to the rear. So I like the cable setup. It's just a personal preference. So you've got your front head that comes across, or beam that comes across to the other side. So we got 4 of these sensors. The rear ones do not have the extended length because it's not needed, because the front is sending the signal back and forth across the 2 beams. So here's the rear. It's a little bit smaller, still single cable, and the lasers up front to communicate front to back, as well as the cables to help with the communication. So basically what happens is you lift the vehicle up, you hit a button, you calibrate the sensors. You got to do it 4 times, 1 for each wheel. So once you get that done, you get it back on the alignment pads. This rack right here is not made specifically for alignments, but these pads are. They're set separately. You can buy them online, but these are a little bit older, so we use these here. It does have indicators on here. We don't use them anymore because we've got the new style alignment machine. So while we are looking at this tire here, what this thing is measuring is, one, the correlation between the front and the rear, the location of where it sits inside the fender well, basically what is considered caster. So whether it's pushed forward or pushed to the rear, your caster. It's also measuring your camber, which is the top of the tire leaning in or out, as well as your toe, which the toe is the front of the tire pushing into the vehicle or away from the vehicle. So all that is taking measurements when you rotate the tires to calibrate the sensors. So we'll go ahead and get this process started here, and I'll explain as we go. One thing we do have to do is add a steering wheel lock, and all that is just sits on the seat, keeps pressure on the steering wheel, and prevents it from moving when you're doing the alignment. So as you can see here, it is pretty good, pretty accurate. I've already been in here, set this up. So this is going to hold the steering wheel in place. So when we start making our adjustments on the tie rods, it stays stationary, gives us a little bit better, more accurate alignment. Okay, now that the alignment machine is recognizing everything, this is the screen here. So what we're going to do is we want to see the bar graphs. So this is in a little bit more detail. You can see the white here signals that this is for the rear. Non-adjustable. It's gray. It cannot be adjusted. That's solid. That's stationary. So we're going to go to the next bar graph, and now this is the front end by the square here. It's outlined. So this is where everything is currently sitting at. Your camber, left to right, where it is sitting. Now the manufacturer recommends and says on the driver's side tire, 1 degree through -0.5 degree is within manufacturer's tolerance, within the specs. Right now we are sitting at -0.02, which means the top of the tire is leaning in just the smallest amount of perfect. The perfect is signified right there by that dot. So it is within manufacturer's tolerance. So we're not going to be adjusting it. If it was out here in the red like you see your toe is, the red means it is out of factory spec. This is within tolerance. Now we are not measuring caster, and in order to do that you do a caster sweep. You turn the wheels, the front wheels one way and then back the other and then back to center, and what that does is calibrate the machine's head to tell you where that tire is in correlation to that fender well, whether it's sitting too far forward, too far back, or right where it's supposed to be. Since we're not having to mess with any of that and our camber is perfect, well, our camber is ideal, it's within tolerance, we don't have to worry too much about that. So right now what we're focusing on is the toe. So right now this vehicle sits is the toe, the front of the tire is pointed out on both sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the tie rod ends, the inner tie rod. We just replaced the outer. We're going to adjust it by the inner. We're going to bring it into the green. So here's the process. We'll show you how to do that. So give me just a second. Okay, so outer tie rod right here. Your inner tie rod is right here. Your threads, your jam nut, your outer tie rod. Now this is going to be adjusted off of the inner because you cannot move this outer because it's attached to the joint to the knuckle. So you got to make all your adjustments from the inner tie rod. So it's a matter of taking the correct size wrench, and this will actually rotate, and we are pulling right now. This side is pulling the tire in, so we got to make sure our jam nut's far enough away, and we're just making that come in. So we're adjusting the inner tie rod, we're pushing the threads further in, forcing the front portion of the tire to come in towards the vehicle. So we're going to switch over and move the camera, and you can see right here where it has come in. We're at negative 0.09. We were way out here at negative 0.25. So now we're going to try and get that as close as possible to center. So we're just going to keep slowly adjusting this until we get to center. Now, you did notice that our camber adjusted, and the reason why is the plates that the tires are sitting on is kind of binding a little bit. So what we're going to do is what is known as a bounce. We're going to bounce the suspension. So we're just going to that resettles everything in place. So our alignment on this side, the toe, is at negative 0.15, which is within specification. It's pointing in just the smallest amount, which is good to help with road crowns and things like that. So we're going to take this jam nut, tighten this jam nut up. Make sure our alignment didn't move, and that's adjusting the toe on this Nissan. Alright, so we got this side done. So we're going to switch over to this side over here. Get some light. And we're going to do basically the same exact thing as the other side. We're just slowly working this inner tie rod in, and we want it to match the other side as close as possible. So the other side, after tightening that jam nut, got down to 0.12 degrees positive. So we're going to try to get to that point there. And we will tighten this jam nut. Finally, the joust of the suspension to basically reset everything, and the tie rod adjustment is complete. Now everything is green for what we are doing. We are almost identical left to right. So that's great. Now what I do here is I go up, get in the vehicle, and I jostle the steering wheel. I turn it back and forth and recenter it and make sure everything is good. So that way I have less comebacks. Some vehicles I'll jump up in the cab 5 or 6 different times to make sure, you know, the alignment is centered and true. So that is the alignment process. So the big thing that we're taking here is, one, the camber is still within tolerance. Your tie rod, your toe is within tolerance. So we are good to go here. So really the big thing is when you start getting into stock alignments, this is what you want to see. When you're doing lift kits and things like that, which we don't do here for safety reasons, the manufacturers have it set to that ride height for a reason, and I'm a believer in that. So when you start getting into your lifted suspensions or lowering suspensions, there's a lot more to take into consideration, but stock suspensions, this is where you want to see. Everything's within green. So that's the alignment process. And I'm going to go ahead and jostle the steering wheel and make sure everything's good. So this is the alignment process.